Hi everyone, this is Michael Tanner at M-Files, and you are listening to Coffee with Caps, our audio series focused on M-Files certified application partners. In each of these audios, we want to introduce you to one of our key partners and to help you understand how their solutions extend the M-Files platform to deliver solutions to our customers. So we hope to get to know them a bit better through these audios and understand their journey both before and since M-Files. We also want to dig into how they work with other M-Files partners in our community and hear about some tips and tricks they might be using to create success. So today, we're going to learn about one of our long-term partners and our first CAP partner, Laminin Solutions. And I'm really happy to welcome LaRues Cilliers to the podcast here. And welcome, LaRues.
Michael, thank you very much for the invitation. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. So can you start us off by just letting us know a little bit of background on yourself and the team at Laminin, and just, some history?
Very good. Well, because I'm gray, I have a long history, but I won't bore you with all of it. My background is indeed deep implementation orientated. I have been involved with the large companies like Deloitte and Pricewaterhouse for many years and have implemented and did business transformation with technology for very large and very varied organizations. Some 10 years ago, I broke away from the large consulting companies, decided to go my own way. That has resulted in me founding Laminin Solutions in 2009. I founded it around M-Files and started to implement M-Files. I wanted to do something different. And since then, me personally and Laminin Solutions have been implementing M-Files for many different companies and many different industries. In 2012, our first customer that we've acquired in 2009 decided to broaden the base that they want to use M-Files extensively. And they started to build applications around M-Files because they embedded M-Files in their business process. They're in manufacturing and wanted to integrate M-Files with their other systems and use the information in M-Files for different purposes. And we started with API development, written many scripts and many .NET applications to try and solve their problems. That fundamentally gave birth to the thought of MFSQL connector, because we realized that if we could effectively make the information in M-Files available for multiple reuse and usages and also change of use, then we could reduce the cost of deployment of .NET development and APIs significantly. So that lies at the heart of where the product, the MFSQL connector product, comes from. It comes from the need for developing or redeveloping and redeploying the information that's in M-Files in multiple ways in an organization.
So, hey, LaRues, so before we jump into MFSQL connector, so can you give us a little bit of summary on the business overall? Because I know you're reselling M-Files and you're also servicing M-Files customers, and I think also some Epicor customers, right?
That's right. That's right. So Laminin Solutions was founded in the UK, and that is where we are a reseller and have been a reseller since 2009. And more or less in 2011, 2012, we started Laminin Solutions in the US after I have came to an agreement with my brother in the US to start Laminin Solutions there. But he in particular have a very long-standing relationship with Epicor. And because we had an opportunity to integrate MFiles with Epicor at that stage, we decided that that is a very good springboard for him to get involved in MFiles and to explore how we could use Epicor with MFiles. So that was the birth of Laminate Solutions in the US. So we have the two offices, but we truly operate almost like a single unit. We operate from a single knowledge base. We help each other and support each other. We also have a development arm that is in India to help us with development work. We're not a very big organization. We do use some external contractors also for helping us, but that is our main focus. And since then, since 2012, we sort of modeled Laminate Solutions around doing both implementations for our own customers as well as focusing on integrating data between different systems. And it's not only Epicor that we are working with, we're also working with other integration points, particularly bespoke integration points, where we're helping companies to make information talk between different systems. So that's our core strength that Laminate Solutions globally are very proud of.
Got it. Got it. Thank you. Thank you. So, so now back to MFSQL connector. So, obviously, MFSQL connector is the certified application that is part of the CAP program here. And you know, the way I always think of it has been kind of a development framework, right? That synchronizes metadata through SQL. But you know, even there, I struggle a bit because I know a lot of our audience may not be super technically oriented. So can you kind of just step back and just try to give us a layman's description of what MFSQL connector is all about, right? I mean, why would I as an end customer or as a partner want to use MFSQL connector versus the alternative approach?
Very good question, Michael. And I think in very simple terms, MFSQL connector enable MFiles to talk to SQL. Why SQL? Well, a huge amount of data and systems is based upon the usage of SQL, and SQL is an incredibly powerful tool to work with data. So it is a platform for reporting, it's a platform for other systems, it is the core, the backbone for a whole information infrastructure in many, many organizations. So to be able to seamlessly make the data in MFiles available in SQL and the data that is in SQL be able to push that into MFiles is really at the heart of what MFSQL connector is. It enables that operation. And you're right, it is a platform. It's a platform with many tools inside of it, many capabilities inside of it, and you can do various things with it. But at the heart of it, it really makes it possible to interact without having to do any API development, because the APIs is embedded in MFSQL connector. So we are using the APIs to do all of the hard work, but you don't have to go out and do it yourself to enable that communication between MFiles and SQL.
Got it. So who's your target user then in terms of like the level of competency?
Well, you could say it is built for someone that have a SQL background or a SQL capability, SQL knowledge. They benefit most with it. Now, a company that need to use the abilities of MFSQL connector may say, well, we don't have somebody that have those skills. That's a skill that is reasonably readily available and easily to acquire in the marketplace to get somebody that have knowledge about SQL or how to use SQL, and somebody that can do that can use the tool.
Got it. So let's change tacks a little bit and maybe talk about some use cases, right? So, and again, this is got a fairly broad audience, so let's keep the specific account name confidential. But think of an account of yours where you've used MFSQL connector and it was a key enabler to success. Can you maybe give us a description on like why they decided to work with the product and how that sale transpired? What caused it to occur?
Sure. Now, there's 3 distinct areas that MFSQL connector stands out. And I want to categorize those because the use cases are often very different depending on what the focus or the objective of the company is. Now, and those 3 use cases is, in summary, making systems talk to each other, integration. The second is sorting out metadata, data cleansing, data manipulation, repurposing of metadata, all of those type of things. And the third thing is using the metadata, and that is reporting and getting information out of M files or into M files to facilitate the use of the information that is in M files and around M files. So those are the 3 core cases or core usage areas. Our MFSQL connector user as a company that had their testing system in a bespoke application. So they had a third-party application that developed test cases for their product. Those test cases had to interact with M files because all of the related documentation was in M files, as well as additional test statistics. And to make that work, they found, and they still today use M files for MFSQL connector for exactly that reason, and that is that the laboratory scan the test information, it goes into SQL through their third-party application. From there, it goes into M files. It's validated against the test results in M files, and it sends the information back to the laboratory. So that's a very simple case where there is a bespoke application in an organization which MFSQL connector just enabled the movement of data between the systems and the validation of the data in the background. We've done several integrations with main applications like Epicor, purchase invoice integration with coming in through scanning, then validated in M files and approved, then going back into Epicor with all of the underlying controls that is associated with that. A application integration with Sage 200. This was in France, where the customer are using Sage for case management. And they had to basically get the cases that is created in Sage flowing through to M files. The changes then that is taking place in M files when the case is worked upon need to go back into Sage for processing in Sage. So that is another integration example. If we get to the use cases around data manipulation, there are so many. Had a customer, they wanted to integrate with Navision from an old stock system. And they initially thought they're going to use MFSQL Connector for the Navision integration, which they did. But MFSQL Connector's main value came into play when they had to basically analyze the information in the old stock system to align it with what is in M files and then prepare all of that information for the migration to Navision. That whole process of realignment of data, of repurposing data, cleansing data, updating it, deleting it, all of that processes were very, MFSQL Connector became very valuable in that, because you have the ability to extract, then use all the power of SQL to analyze it, repurpose it, compare it, split it, and then when you're ready, you basically can update that information back into M files to update M files. So you had that batch processing capability of manipulating data. And then the third part of it is just reporting. It's just to be able to use the data in M files.
Well, I guess so. So if the way I'm interpreting everything you've just said is that the key value proposition is, for people who need to do this type of work, it is one, it's making it more simple because you don't really need to get deeply into the APIs in order to do this level of integration or synchronization. And two, just the simple productivity enhancement over using a more direct, a direct level approach to do that level of integration, right? I mean, if I could just bubble it up, am I kind of hitting on the top two things?
Yes, I think it definitely makes the task easier because you have the ability to get and work with the data before you need to make the final updates, so that is a main part of it, and it gives you control over the data in a much bigger and better way than if you have to program every step of the way before you can effectively achieve your objective.
Right, and since so many M-Files customers have integration with some kind of system of record, it sounds like that the potential use of MFSQL connector is really very, very broad.
Yeah, and what we've actually found, there are many system integration tools and already developed, like for instance Microsoft CRM integration that is there and you can use it, and they work well. We have situations where MFSQL Connector works alongside those applications being used for what they have been built for, but then the customer have additional needs where MFSQL Connector is an easy way to surface and to work with those additional needs that is not covered in the standard application integration.
Sure. So then from a partner point of view, I'll ask you maybe a silly question. So, of course, partners make, a good amount of their business in time and materials development, and, their technical competency is part of the differentiation. So, given that, what's their benefit? What's the benefit to, an M-Files partner using MFSQL Connector versus and I know this sounds crazy, but maybe just, billing some more hours to get the job done?
Sure. Well, we have several resellers, one in particular, and I won't mention names and places, that have adopted MFSQL Connector. We do very little for that reseller and his customers, but they have already sold 7 licenses, and they are building a wide variety of different applications for their customers using the tool. So effectively, they have built a whole line of business around using the power of MFSQL Connector to make it easier for them to build applications for their customers. So that is one example. I have another reseller that is including MFSQL connector in their own product. They have their own product, and they have adopted and including it as part of their product, just because it means that they don't have to go and do all this development themselves. It is there. They can just use it. Then we have other resellers where they have less technical capability and they rely more on us to support them and to support their customers to help them with the deployment. In many cases, we do not do any of the M-Files side of the work. So the reseller do all of the M-Files work. All that we do is we provide support either directly to the reseller or to his customer with regard to the more technical aspects of SQL and how to get it going. In many cases, it's a question of us being involved at an early stage to help them, support them, to figure out how to do it, to get the procedures done, and then it just runs. We have cases where the MFSQL connector just churns away in the background, and there's very little interaction that is necessary on a day-to-day basis for those customers.
You know, something that really caught my ear. So it sounds like for a number of your partners, basically by selling MFSQL connector, it simplifies. Maybe it just simplifies things to the point where it actually causes more integration services to be sold more quickly over the course of time, right? I mean, they're basically upselling services because the customer realizes that it's easier to do it.
Yes, and it's also easier to make changes.
Yeah.
Because if you have a change of vault structure or you have a change of properties, to go back to .NET programming to effectively get the developers that have done this job to you to come and do that, that is a much more difficult task.
Sure. Yeah, that makes great sense. So obviously you're working through resellers, and you know, are you looking to expand?
Absolutely. You know, we're all the time looking at new resellers. Our current resellers are getting new opportunities that they envisage and that they think that they can do with the product. So we definitely are wanting to take the product forward. In fact, the release that we are due to publish in the near future, a large part of the functionality of that release has been requested by the resellers to say, oh, I wish we could do this, I wish we could do that. So we are responding to the market and saying, what is it that you want to see, or what is it that you want to accomplish? And that drives the further innovation and further functionality that we are building into the product.
Right, and you're in North America. You're also in UK. Are you focused in any other regions?
We have heavily sold into Australia and into New Zealand and into Europe, into Canada, into Ireland. So there are some prototyping taking place in South America, in Mexico. So yes, we are reaching resellers across the world.
Got it. What about languages? I mean, you described a lot of English-speaking countries. Does it support other languages?
Oh, I forgot Finland. You know, there's some really big resellers in Finland that is also the users and building their own applications with MFSQL connector. Yeah, it is, the core of the code is English, but it can operate within the framework of another language, like for instance, Finnish, French, German, you know, Netherlands, all of those. The front-end language is not an issue, but the SQL in itself operates mainly in English. So the code is not translated, but the front end is
Sure.
capable of presenting itself.
Sure. Okay. That's great. That's great. And so then, as you're looking for additional partners to work with, how would you describe your ideal partner? What's an ideal partner for you to work with?
What we have noticed is that MFSQL Connector really comes to its own when it solves a problem for a partner or for a customer. And we often find that the partner has gone through multiple iterations in trying to solve the problem, couldn't do it, and then come to us and said, please help. So what we are trying to get to is to a place where people are aware of what MFSQL Connector can do for them, particularly also within M-Files, so that the M-Files CAMs and salespeople in M-Files, that they realize that here is something that is complementary to M-Files, but can help with some peculiar problems that they may face with their customers, where they have something that they can offer instead of saying, well, this is going to be tough to do, or making a promise that is quite difficult to deliver. So our aim is to be there with an understanding of what MFSQL Connector can do when a reseller or a customer hits a problem that can be done, can be solved with this technology.
And you say be there. So what about implementation, right? So you must provide a pretty good on-ramp program for people you partner with, right?
Yes. So so what we do, all the documentation, there's lots of documentation available about the use of the product. We regularly bring out blogs to show how it can be used in different situations. And I know that the resellers are using this documentation. So in terms of help, in terms of getting started, there's lots of help to get yourself started. We like to get involved with the initial installation and deployment because we feel that that builds the relationship with the reseller, but it also helps them to come over the inertia of getting started. We help them to think through what is the use case, what is necessary to work with it. So we're engaged in that process. And then from there on, it really depends on whether they want us to be involved in the actual deployment or whether they just want to ask us when they have a problem.
Sure. Well, so then let me ask you maybe a little tough question here, LaRues. So you're also a reseller of M-Files, and
Sure.
You're selling MFSQL connectors, software license. So if you're working directly with another partner, because I know some partners are, get concerned about the fact that you're also selling M-Files. So how does that work? Do you ever run into a situation where, the partner's got some concerns, and if so, how do you alleviate those concerns?
I appreciate the concerns. We are very sensitive for those concerns in the sense that partners are very protective of their customers, which is right. In the two countries, UK and US, or Florida, where we operate, we will sell M-Files, and we do still have our own clients that we serve. But where a customer is brought to, via a reseller, we work through that reseller. To use an example, I recently got a call from a customer, direct call from a customer that got our information from the web and from the M-Files catalog, and were interested in product. And after I sort of had a first conversation with him, I said to him, well, who is your reseller? Because we prefer to work through the reseller. And then by coming back to us and say, well, this is the reseller, I said, well, you know, that reseller is aware of MFSQL connector. Would you give me permission to effectively connect with that reseller and introduce the two of you, because you're obviously not knowing that your reseller actually knows this product. And well, today that reseller is actually working with that customer and has just recently actually bought the license for MFSQL connector to deploy it. So in a certain way, we gave away the services for that, but that's the way to do it. You know, if it's in a different country, the delivery is the option of the reseller. If they want to use our services, they're welcome, but our preference is that they take responsibility and they work with. We have a reseller agreement which state all of this, so all of the documentation is in place.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for that. And you know, I have to rewind a little bit because I meant to ask you a question about licensing. So do you sell MFSQL connector on a one-time license fee or a subscription fee? How does all that work?
Release 4 has aligned itself with the new MFiles subscription licensing model. So we follow very closely on the top of the MFiles licensing model, where A, it's subscription, and B, it is volume-based based upon the number of users in MFiles. So we use the same brackets that MFiles use for the brackets for volume pricing.
So LaRues, hey, we're getting close to a time when we need to wrap the interview, but before we do that, is there anything else that you want to add that that I haven't asked that you think our sales and partner community might be interested in? You know, so that could be anything from types of customers to kind of your directions, where you're going, and how you feel that you really want to proceed here as a CAP partner.
MFSQL connector is ideal for helping the integration between MFiles and SQL. If you have a situation whereby your customer is using SQL as part of its infrastructure, you should consider MFSQL connector as part of your tool set, because you will get the benefit through that. And I think that, to me, is almost like a leap of faith for the reseller to say, this is something that can benefit my customer in many different ways by actually mastering or getting better use for it.
Perfect. Well, in that case, on behalf of MFiles, LaRues, let me just say thank you for taking the time out. This has been really very helpful. I think you really provided I think a good understanding of what the use cases are and how partners can benefit from MFSQL connector. Just for the audience at large, I'll just point out that you can learn more about Laminin and MFSQL connector on the MFiles site in the solution catalog. Or you can also go to their website, of course, at Laminin Solutions. That's LAMININ solutions.com. And with that, I'll sign off and conclude this Coffee with Caps interview. So thank you to everybody, and good selling to all.